And I'm struggling with just not sleeping like for 4 hours for one night. And I'm like crying and struggling. And those guys go for 100 days in a row, 2 hours of sleep. And they actually do a double marathon. Like, it's not like they're sitting around quietly. They're doing an extremely physical, demanding thing, and they sleep 2 hours and they're fine. Okay, what I'm actually doing here, like reflecting on myself, I was like, it's impossible. The thing I'm trying right now is virtually impossible. It's trying to fall asleep, and the more I try, the less likely it is to happen. And so it dawned on me very clearly. And then I said, what I'm doing is the equivalent of chasing my shadow. So I'm running after my shadow. The faster I run, the faster the shadow will run. I can never, ever, ever reach it unless I run in the speed of light, which I think is physically impossible. So there's no way.
So sorry to interrupt, but I have something to tell you about that I think truly, truly matters. And it is the Festival of Understanding that I so hope that you are going to be a part of. This is going to be a free 5-day event starting on March 17th, where every morning I'm going to give a 15-minute presentation that is going to be followed by 15 minutes of Q&A. And we're going to be talking about things like our new definition of insomnia, tokenization, which is a real centerpiece of the new Nada philosophy. We're going to talk about befriending beyond wakefulness and much more. If this sounds like something you want to be part of, then just find the link in the description. Did I mention it is free? And I think it's going to be especially valuable if you've been tuning in for a while and you haven't yet seen that shift, that click, that change that you're looking for. So again, just find the link in the description, register for this event, and I can't wait to see you in the first ever Festival of Understanding. Hi, everyone, and welcome to yet another really special Talking Insomnia episode. We have Carlos with us. Welcome.
Hello. Hi, Daniel.
So nice to have you here. And for the audience, I just want to share how this episode came about. A little bit, atypical, not the classic story of how these episodes come out, but what actually happened was you purchased one of the courses, the one about the sleep onset and sleep maintenance insomnia, and you happen to be a course creator, so you have a lot of experience with that, and you found that there was an issue with the course. Like I had actually, there were 2 episodes I had like double uploaded, so there was a little back and forth there, but I sent you a personal letter, like, sorry about this, and I fixed it now. And then you replied to me and said, like, okay, no problem. By the way, here's some thoughts. And you sent me kind of a long email with a lot of nice insight. And then I was like, oh, maybe we should share this with the audience. So that's kind of the backstory. But with that said, maybe you can, we talked earlier about how you felt like your kind of journey through insomnia was a little bit kind of generic. We've heard it before. So if you want to maybe just give us like a short version and then tell us some of the insights that you would like to share with the audience.
Yes. First off, I think this is kind of mandatory. Everybody has to say thank you first for all your work, because it helped me a lot in a very critical moment, in very, very dark moments, as everybody who goes through this knows. And I truly think in some cases it's life-saving. So thank you for all your work. And in the spirit of sharing and helping myself, I will go very shortly into my personal story, because it's very normal, quote unquote. But then maybe what's not so normal is the insights I gained from it, and which is all part of my perspective and my worldview. So my own story is not a very old story. It's not a very long story. It started, now we have February 2025 as context. So it started in August 2023. So it's summer 2 years ago. And it was a traumatic event. And this traumatic event then caused a very intense phase of intense fear. You could actually call it a prolonged panic attack for several weeks on end. So it was intense fear, and this was the starting point. And then, of course, at some point during this like intense fear, I didn't sleep. And then the classic thing happened. Okay, sleep became the issue by itself. I then started focusing on, oh, I don't sleep. I need to do something to get my sleep in order. And so I spiraled, classic spiral. And I'm very creative, so I spiraled very deep. I'm very obsessive and very creative, and this is very bad. in this particular issue, it is really not a blessing. And I spiraled very deeply until it is an interesting thing what I found along the way, and then in the summer of 2024, so 1 year later, by me just drifting, then I found your teachings, and this was like the ladder that helped me out. Even though it was not so much the content, but the reassurance, because many of the things you teach, I discovered intuitively. And I almost named them one by one, the exact same naming. Just before starting this recording, I went through my old records, my things I wrote down, just the downloads of my thinking during this period of darkness. And it's just one on one. It could be like phrases from your books. It is so interesting how, like, even though, I arrived at those things through intuition in this very deep moments of pain and suffering. And you arrived from them like from a very high point of view of like, you saw it and I felt it. And we arrived at pretty much the same things, but I didn't believe, quote unquote, I didn't believe myself. I always thought, no, this can't be right because I'm still stuck. Then being acknowledged by your teaching was like the way out. Now maybe let's start a little bit with the things that guided me and helped me along the way, which is maybe the value I can give to the other people listening today. First off, the book that was with me all the time from the beginning of the struggles was The Power of Now. So that's probably nothing new. It's like Eckhart Tolle, and he's considered a classic in many regards. And this book is basically my go-to resource whenever I'm in trouble in life, whatever kind of trouble. I go to The Power of Now and I reread it. And I did the same thing with this book. By now, I must have read it, I don't know, 30 times, I don't know. And the amazing thing is because I view it as one of the holy books. And the holy books, they never end in depth. So you can endlessly take from them because they were written directly connected to the source. So they have endless depth. And I'm always amazed, after 20, 30 times reading, I still discover new understandings. And that's amazing to me. So whoever doesn't know The Power of Now, it's easy a recommendation. It's fantastic. I truly think that Eckhart Tolle is enlightened. He's an avatar. I truly believe that he's like a modern day Buddha, which is not so special in some ways. Like, there are people that just reach that point of enlightenment. And to me, this is such an incredible blessing because the audiobook was read by himself. And I only listen to the audiobook all the time. I got the book in physical form as well, but I listen rather than I read. And listening to him, to me, is like, what a great opportunity. It's like listening to Jesus reading the Bible. Like, the original guy reads the original source. It's like such, and so the small inflections in his voice and the small pauses he makes, like there's so much meaning in this as well. It's like a huge additional level of meaning. And so to me, it's like what a great time to be alive, to have access to such a source. And it's basically for free because you can get the audiobook for €10 or something, $10. It's nothing. So this is one thing. And a side effect, which actually connects very well to insomnia, he has got the most boring voice in the world. He must have the most boring voice and also at the same time the most soothing voice. And so listening to him still until this day, if I struggle, if I have a night where I cannot really fall asleep, because falling asleep is my issue, it's really the sleep onset. I just don't go over to unconsciousness. And if I feel okay, I cannot make it, I'm just too wired, then I listen to his audio and like his voice gets me into trance, like almost like immediately, 10 minutes, 15, 20, I don't know, maybe 5, and I'm gone. And so this is another big tip for me. And there is actually a very, very good reason for this, which I didn't know, which I only learned later, that the level, the voice of your inner dialogue has such a huge effect on your nervous system. So if I talk to myself, my inner dialogue is like very aggressive or very, very tragic, if this is the tone of voice, it will agitate my nervous system in a certain way. If I instead consciously change my tone of voice to a very soothing, almost like baby talk. Okay, everything is fine, like da da da. Okay, you can rest. Just like making this switch, it has a double effect because one, suddenly you are aware of your inner dialogue, which means you're one step, you're not in your observer mode already. But then this soothing really makes you calm down. This is why we talk to babies like this. It's not the babies understand the word we say, or dogs, but the the tone of voice really has an effect on the nervous system. And this is what Eckhart Tolle's voice does. So there's actual like a scientific aspect to it as well. But this is just one resource I want to share with everyone. So great,
Yeah, no,
it's out there.
it's an amazing book. I love it. And now, for somebody who hasn't read it and knows very little about Eckhart Tolle, I know there's a ton of insight in it. But what would you say to somebody who's not familiar is maybe some key teachings, some insights from his work that were helpful to you?
The key chapters are the last two for me. I think it's chapter 9 and chapter 10, and they are on basically surrendering and suffering. These are the ones I really heard on repeat endless times, and he really goes into the deep surrender and into the way of the cross, which is very much what happened to me with insomnia, and which can happen to everyone listening right now. Everyone listening right now in a state of insomnia. There's probably also people that are already out of it, and so this is past history for them. But some people are still struggling while listening to them. And the last thing they could imagine is that there is something good that will come out of this, that this is not a senseless struggle, which is just a painful, horrible thing happening, but there is a deep meaning and a gift hidden in this. And he talks about this in the chapters 9 and 10. And it's the deep surrender, not only on one level to the uncomfortable pain, not just surrendering to, okay, I cannot sleep, or okay, I'm tired and I surrender to this feeling, but one level deeper to truly surrender to fate and say, this is part of my journey and this will change me forever and this will stay with me forever on a deep level, and it will enrich me and deepen me as a person. I could quote things like one on word by word because I've listened to them so often, and it's really the thing he says about it's a question answer format, the book. So there's always questions and he answers, and the question is, if I would be always positive, like the question, if I'm always positive, am I like a happy-go-lucky positive person? How can it be that I invite like darkness or like bad things into my life? How could this even be? And he answers with the question, do you really have the total picture? Do you really know what's good and bad in your life? And there are many people to whom lack, limitation, loss have been the greatest teachers in their life, and it gave them humility, depth, and compassion. And this is exactly what happened to me. Like, it really, going through such an intense phase of prolonged suffering, which insomnia is, because not sleeping is, after all, torture. It really changes you deeply. It makes you more human. It makes you more real and more authentic. And this is like one of the gifts of this book, but it is just one. Every chapter has a different approach, which is so valuable on the inner body, on the pain body, on the thoughts that torture us. Like, it's actually, I could listen to it tonight and I would find a new thing.
Yeah.
So this is a big recommendation I really want to make.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think everyone who hasn't checked it out definitely do. I loved it. And I want to just before we continue with like things you want to share with the audience, I just want to echo that something that, or share something that I've thought about a lot, but it came up again like the other day, which is that I really view, like, when somebody finds a sleep coach school in a state of like sleep struggles, from my point of view, I don't see it as like, oh, you have a problem, let's fix it. I think of it more as like, oh, you're at this Tory gate, like this gate to a whole new world, right? You have an opportunity, you have an invitation to learn things from which you will emerge, as you said, with so much more, so much is insight and wisdom, and especially to mention like empathy for other people, patience, if you will, and not focusing on things we can't control. There's so much value to be learned. So I just kind of want to emphasize that. I truly believe that as well. But with that said, take us further. What other things were helpful to you?
Another teacher that helped me along the way, which I discovered through this process, Eckhart Tolle, I knew before. So he was like my go-to source, and he didn't disappoint. But another one I discovered was Gabor Maté, and he's also very famous, very big. But I didn't know him before because he teaches trauma mostly. He's famous for his teachings on trauma, and I didn't have any contact with that topic before in my life. And then this thing came into my life, and what I want to share here is basically an insight that really helped me. It was a big revelation, and it's that he says. I hope I don't butcher it. The quote. I hope I get it right. But basically, as I understood it, he says that trauma is not so much the event itself, but our reaction to the event. So the thing we do post-event is the real, true cause of trauma. And I have a very weird, a good example for that. It's true because the traumatic event itself wasn't really a bad thing in itself. I won't go into it, but I just say that the event by itself, but other people's standards and other people seen by other people, they could even see it as a nice thing happening to them, maybe even as a prideful story. But for me, it was a mistake, and this caused this intense phase of fear. So just to separate, the event itself was neither very long nor was it very bad. It was not like a car accident. I saw 14 dead people. It was nothing of that nature. It was actually a very neutral, nice event. But afterwards, I had such a tremendous amount of fear caused by it, of the consequences of this event. And this was the trauma. So the reaction was the actual thing, not the event. And this was a big separation. And this was a big aha for me. Like, okay, because if I would have looked at it before, I thought nothing bad happened to me. It's true. But I reacted in a very intense way. And to go one step further, what then happened is also all things I learned afterwards, like just to share all the gifts of understanding and learning that came through this insomnia. Let's call it path, not struggle. Let's call it path. And it was that what happened to my nervous system. I also delved into the topics of fear and of OCD, and the nervous system is a key part of it. And so what I did with this prolonged phase of extreme fear, and I just blocked it. I didn't process it. I just pushed it away. And what I did, I pushed it basically into my body and into my nervous system. So I had this is what caused the hyperarousal, which wouldn't go away, which then the struggle led to the struggle with sleeping. So I just pushed fear into my body, and this is then what kept me stuck in the loop. So just another learning I had, all things I never knew before.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. I consider that like maybe like the universal code to like understand human experiences. Like it's not the things that happen to us, but how we react to them that truly, really, really matter, right? And now a question for you is like pushing the fear deep inside yourself. Did you do that with any like external means, or was it just like whenever fear came up, you kind of distracted yourself or forced you? How did you quote unquote do that?
No, I acted normal. I didn't want my outside world. I have a family, so I was constantly surrounded by people. It's not like if I would be a single person living alone, I could have probably reacted differently. But since I was in a family situation, I didn't want to show anybody, and so I basically always played like a nice world. Everything is good. There's nothing to see. Let's go on with life. And beneath like a smile, beneath a normal conversation, there was like abject terror and horror, and I could like hold this, and it was in a little in some way, in a confusing way, I'm even proud of me not cracking under this pressure, even though I did not do myself a favor by doing it. It was actually very stupid, but still I'm proud I didn't crack. Okay. That was my part.
I hear. Wow. No, thanks for sharing that. And that also goes to, people, you hear often this like fake it till you make it, which I can understand that sometimes you may need to kind of nudge yourself to do things you're uncomfortable with, but I also kind of disagree with that. Like if you're faking it in an attempt to just like completely suppress things within you, that's probably quite tricky. But anyways, where does yours? We were learning so much from you, Carlos. So just
I hope to bring up new things, which is difficult because your work is so expansive and you made so much great stuff. So adding new stuff is kind of difficult, but I try. The next resource that helped me along this process is an audio course. I think it's not available in book form. I think it truly is an audio work. And it is called The Science of Enlightenment. Probably you know it, by Xin Yang.
I haven't come across that actually, so that's new for me. Very interesting. Yeah.
Okay, the Science of Enlightenment. Xin Yang is a Buddhist monk, American. He's American, but then he lived in Japan, and he's like this bridge between Western and Eastern world. Like he can use Western language and Western examples and explaining deep Eastern ideas, which in very many ways are very paradoxical for the Western mind. He's basically a modern day Alan Watts, if you would say that.
No, yeah.
And he's very scientific. And this course, The Science of Enlightenment, it really works a lot with the inner introspection and how to learn to observe and how to work with one's own emotions. And basically it's this, he calls it mindfulness and equanimity. Those are the two those are the two key things he teaches. Mindfulness and equanimity. Eckhart Tolle would call those things awareness and acceptance, which means you train yourself becoming very aware or mindful of your inner world as well. And we can split this into the thinking part and the feeling part. And you become very aware of just observing those two things. And then you become a master at letting those things pass through you. You learn the skill at feeling. This is what Xin Yang calls it, skill at feeling, which is one of the very, very fundamental skills any human can have. Because skill at feeling means two things. It means that painful situations will be less painful, because suffering equals pain times resistance. So, and he goes into that. So the less you resist, the less suffering there is. There's a pain. There's, let's say, call it a pain signal, but there's no suffering. You can let it go through you. And the other thing is, with the mindfulness, that pleasurable things, they become more pleasurable. So there's an upside. It's a double-edged sword in a good way, because not only suffering decreases, but pleasure increases. Everybody should learn this. What is the return on invest on that? Because basically all our life, what we're trying to do in some way is connected to, I want to be happy. Like we try to get a nice girlfriend, we try to make money, we try to get all those external things. For what? So I become happy, quote unquote. And this is the direct path. Go and whatever will come into your life, your life will be so enriched, and the Science of Enlightenment is really, I think, one of the great works. Unfortunately, I'm not making this video right now in the room next to myself, because my 3-year-old is sitting there and being sedated by some videos, so I can talk in quiet. But I have one of my big walls of my library. I think 4,000 books in my home, and so you would see this huge wall of books behind of me. Which I'm not saying to brag. I just say I looked into a lot of stuff, and the Science of Enlightenment is one of the best ever. If I would have top 5, it's in there. So, which means it's a big recommendation for everyone. It will be huge. And it brings me to another discovery, something I discovered through the Science of Enlightenment, which I didn't know, which was very, very key to my own insomnia journey. Because it's not an insomnia course. The Science of Enlightenment is a general, let's say, mindfulness and equanimity course, acceptance course. But he actually referred to, and he made me discover the marathon monks of Mount Hiei. Have you ever heard of them?
No.
This is the most amazing thing. I then researched it myself, and I bought the book on those guys exclusively because it fascinated me so much. Who are those marathon monk guys? Xin Yang, he actually met with them, and so he then talks about them in from first hand encounter. Who are those guys? It's an old ancient Japanese tradition. It's hundreds of years old, and it's a monastery in Kyoto. So they are on the Mount Hiei. This is the name of the mountain. It is one of the holy mountains of Kyoto. And there, this monastery, they have this ritual of monks, and it's called the marathon monks. You would ask, okay, why are they called like this? So those guys have a very, very Very, 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 very tough ritual. It takes 10 years. So to become like a marathon monk, the ritual takes 10 years. Okay, so it starts off good. So what do they do in those 10 years? Basically, every year they have to do one part of the ritual, and it totally takes 10 years. And one is a marching ritual, and the other is a meditation ritual. I will shortly explain both because they very strongly connect to the issue of sleeping. So those guys, they have to march. They have to do a marathon. And they don't start out like this, but by year, I think 5, 6, or 7, so around this time, their discipline increases to this point. What they have to do is 100 days in a row, for 100 days in a row, which means every day, single day, no weekends, 100 days in a row, they have to walk. Actually, it's a fast walk, the distance of 84 kilometers, which is a double marathon. So every day for 100 days in a row, they walk 84 kilometers. Basically, they run 84 kilometers, running down their mountain, passing all the holy shrines and like the little places of worship in Kyoto in a certain order, speaking a certain prayer at each one, and returning to their monastery, sleeping for 2 hours, and starting the whole thing over again for 100 days in a row, non-stop. And the tough guys, they do it for 200 days in a row. It's true. It's like, and I can even add even more extreme to this. It becomes even like, it's already unbelievable. It's even more unbelievable knowing the other stuff they do. They carry a belt with them. In this belt, there is a knife. If they fail to complete a single day's journey, their task is to ritually suicide themselves. So there's, I would say, some pressure on top of this. And this is part of the ritual. And listening to this, reading this, and it was like, and I'm struggling with just not sleeping like for 4 hours for one night. And I'm like crying and struggling. And those guys go for 100 days in a row, 2 hours of sleep. And they actually do a double marathon. Like, it's not like they're sitting around quietly. They're doing an extremely physical, demanding thing, and they sleep 2 hours, and they're fine. So this made me give a new perspective. Okay, maybe I shouldn't be so, maybe I can toughen up a little bit at least. I don't have to take it to these extremes. But actually, I'm not done with the marathon monks yet. There is a second part of the ritual. So I think by the mid-time of their 10-year ritual, there is a test. It's called Dori. I hope I pronounce it almost right. So Dori, I don't speak Japanese. So this is a meditation ritual they do. They are under observance. So other monks are with them in the room while they do it. They're not alone. And what they do, they have to meditate. They have to sit in the meditation pose for 9 days. 9 days, non-stop. And if I say 9 days non-stop, I mean no eating, no drinking, and no sleeping for 9 days. And they're under observation while they do it. The other monks, they actually just like, okay, so maybe I can go like one night without a sleep. It's not so bad if they can go 9 nights, and they do that. And to me, it's like, it really shifted my frame of what is possible, because like this actually denies human logic. You would say you would die. Everybody thinks like, if I don't drink water for 2 days, I die. They go for 9 days. And to me, it's like, okay, so maybe I should relax a little. And this was the effect it had on me. It's like, okay, all is well. You're fine. This is one of the side effects it had for me. Did you know the story?
No, I did not. And as you were starting to tell it, I thought, the point Carlos is probably trying to make is that we're capable. We humans, the human body, the human mind is capable of much more than we believe it to be. And this illustrates that. And yeah, it just sounds incredible.
Also they have no long-term bad consequences, which means all this fear we have of if we don't sleep, this huge industry that is like very motivated to tell us if you don't sleep, you will die of heart attack, stroke, and cancer at the same time. And it will be horrible. Like, there's so much fear involved with this not sleeping. And those guys, they really prove, they go 100, 200 days on end, basically with very, very little to no sleep. And there's no long-term side effects. They go till they're 80. I mean, it's even harder knowing that what they do is they do it during the whole year, which means they do it in wintertime. They don't have actual shoes while they do it. They have like some bamboo stuff wrapped around they don't wear shoes basically doing it. And they do it in the darkness and in the snow in the winter. Like this all adds to the impossibility of it, but they do it. And to me, it's like, okay, so if this can be done, then maybe I can get through my day.
Yeah. No, it's incredible. It reminds me a little bit of, it made me think of, Randy Gardner is his name. You know, the person who's supposedly has like the world record in not sleeping. And this was back in the 60s. They did these experiments and they essentially tried
16 days was it, right?
I think it was 11, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
But, you know, it wouldn't surprise me if these monks have like tried to see how long they can push it. And they probably found like the natural limit is somewhere around that, you know? And then so they were like, okay, we're going to do 9 days. Maybe they came up with it by experimentation, but it reminded me of that. But yeah, super fascinating. Oh, and by the way, when you, this Shinsen Yang, I haven't really studied his work, but when you said, you know, suffering equals pain times resistance, I was like, oh, that's the source of that wonderful kind of equation. So I do know of him through that equation.
Yeah, it is a great access for Western minds, because we have this logical thinking and the paradoxes. He can really show them very well, which actually brings me to some. It's not so much more stuff of real, true, new sources I can bring, but maybe I can share some of the own thoughts I had, and some of the, because you like to work with analogies, you like to work with images that make things clear. And of course, you have this great gas and brake analogy. For example, the turbulence analogy, where when you go with the airplane and you want to land, that you go through a turbulence. And similar to when you want to sleep and you go to fall asleep, there's this turbulence in the middle, and this is a normal part of the process. Those are great images. And images that helped me, or that I came up with, for example, was, probably you said it yourself somewhere in your teachings, probably I got it from you, but an image that was very clear to me at one point when I was in one of those nights where I just didn't sleep. And so you got a lot of time lying awake in bed, and so your mind has a lot of space to run. And so then I thought, okay, what I'm actually doing here, like reflecting on myself, was like, it's impossible. The thing I'm trying right now is virtually impossible. It dawned on me. So I'm trying to fall asleep, and the more I try, the less likely it is to happen. And so it dawned on me very clearly. And then I said, what I'm doing is the equivalent of chasing my shadow. So I'm running after my shadow. The faster I run, the faster the shadow will run. I can never, ever, ever reach it unless I run in the speed of light, which I think is physically impossible. So there's no way. And so this image of myself, of the struggle, of the impossibility of ever reaching my goal, this was like one image. I don't know if you use it in your teachings, but to me it's like very obvious, like you cannot ever reach your shadow.
No, it's super nice. And as you said that, I was like, that's going to be the thumbnail for this video. But anyway, no, it's super nice, and never used that particular analogy, but you know, it's so true. And then if you add, you can kind of add to that when you realize it's completely impossible to fall asleep. And then you add to that when we don't fall asleep, we are critical of ourselves. We're like, why couldn't you do it? What's wrong with you? Like it makes that self-criticism so you can see the futility and in the lack of any form of validity for that self-criticism when you understand that. So it's kind of a real invitation for self-kindness for those who've been critical of themselves for not being able to fall asleep. Just want to add that.
Very good, very good. Another image that came to myself is the image of a lake. And so if I ask you, okay, so you got following test to do. So this lake is actually like there's some movement in the lake. Your job is to get the lake to be quiet. What do you do?
Yeah, that one, I thought about exactly that one. And the point, of course, is that anything you do to try to calm the lake down produces more movement. Yeah.
Exactly. So
the answer is there's nothing to do. You just have to do nothing and let it calm itself.
Exactly. There's no external force that you can ever apply to it. You will always disrupt the process, the natural process. And so this is helpful for me when it was helpful in this phase when I always, with sleep struggles or with sleep efforts, and you always say, whatever I'm doing, I'm stirring up the water again. This is it's counterproductive. I cannot ever work. So this is also this like, because it's a paradox, you know? How do you do something without doing something? It is a paradox. That this actually the tough thing about insomnia, but actually if you go through it, looking back on it, it's the beauty of it, it's the paradoxes. It is such a counterintuitive, very, very tricky thing. And this is why also it took me so long to get through it, because usually maybe you can think by now, I'm a fast thinker. I go through problems very fast. And this one I really stuck. And it's like, okay, because my thinking was the problem. Yeah. That's very evil.
No, you said it. I think that one is like, how do you explain non-doing or the absence? It's so tricky because anything you do to try to answer it sounds like something to do. So that's, to me, that's kind of like the razor's edge, like, you know, that paradox of explaining nothingness. Similar to like, you know, how we think of like the universe, and we think of like, okay, so it's this big, right? But what's beyond it? And we're like, but there's nothing there. It's like self-contained. Okay, but what if we go really, really fast and we like ram through what's on the other side? No, nothing. It doesn't even exist. It's like, it's hard to explain those things or understand.
It's beautiful. That is a key part of the whole issue, is these paradoxes. The paradoxes in the Zen tradition, they treat the issue of paradoxes with those koans. You probably know the koans. Yeah, there's like famous ones.
The riddles there,
yeah, like what is the sound of one hand clapping? It's like this is a famous a classic koan. And the idea is that the Zen master gives these to the students, and he sends them away to meditate for weeks on end until it basically breaks their mind, it breaks their head, and they come back. I get it. And they can't even answer because there is no answer, but they get it. So it's they're created to actually break the mind in a certain way, or actually break a path of logic, which actually is a trap. And I created my own koans regarding the issue of sleep, because I thought, okay, I got a paradox here. And so, for example, one of those koans I created is, because I just stated here. So imagine you are on a Zen mountain and there's a Zen master with a big, big beard. And the context is important here, like, because those things, they have only meaning if you have the great big context. And so there's this old man, and he's like, master, teach me, I want enlightenment. And he goes like this, and he's like, student, how do you solve the problem if problem solving is the problem? How do you solve the problem if problem solving is the problem? Go meditate.
Yeah.
If you go long enough down this path, it will break your mind. You're just like, and you will be free.
Yeah.
It is a koan. Everyone who struggles with sleep, deep down, struggles with this. I did.
Yeah. No,
another koan I can share is another riddle is, how do you solve a problem that doesn't exist?
Yeah, right.
Because insomnia in many ways doesn't exist. There's no problem, but you try to solve it. And
yeah,
there you go. How do you solve a problem that doesn't exist? Have fun.
No, this is super fascinating. And by the way, I know this is a little detour, but before we started recording, we talked about how, you know, ChatGPT is so incredible, it can answer anything. But I've done this like numerous times now. It's still with the latest version. It doesn't seem to get it. I'm telling like, okay, let's make the assumption that we don't need anything to fall asleep. It's a passive and automatic process. What will you tell somebody that has insomnia? And ChatGPT will go like, well, I will tell them like to keep their bedroom really cool, not to try to sleep, but just to soothe them down. It's like, it's still like the smartest thing we ever created cannot understand at this point this concept of nothingness, right? It's very fascinating.
Because it's beyond logic.
Yeah, and exactly. It's trained on like all kind of human thinking and logic on the internet, right? And it just cannot arrive there, at least not yet.
No, wisdom is beyond logic. Wisdom is beyond knowledge. And this is why insomnia, through its very tricky nature, is a very direct path to these very, very obscure and you cannot even really grasp this deep wisdom that is behind there. But if you crack it, it can really set off a very, very large process, which then, as you always say, has effects in all your life. in all different life areas, because you cannot solve a problem at the level of consciousness that created it. That's, I think Einstein said that. So you cannot solve the problem at this level. So you have to actually evolve in consciousness to view the problem from a different source, and then you can break through. This is very fascinating. Another, I think this is the last koan I'll share, or a paradox. It's not as much a koan, but to fall asleep, basically, you have to do nothing, not even nothing. Let's put it again. You have to do absolutely nothing, not even nothing.
Yeah. No, I see it, because like, we often say like, you don't do it, you just do nothing, and then people are gonna be like, okay, I'm doing nothing now, but I'm not falling asleep, but I'm really doing nothing, right? But
exactly. You don't even have to do nothing.
Yes.
And,
not even nothing. Yeah, that's
exactly.
good. Yeah, exactly. Not even nothing.
It is interesting. Yeah. So you see like how even in my struggle and pain, I can have fun.
No, and then not only that, you're sharing it with our community here, which I think a lot of people will find so much value in here, and start reading Eckhart Tolle and studying Gabor Maté, and finding their own their own journey. So yeah, let's conclude here. It was super nice, Carlos, to have you on a guest, and thanks so much for sharing everything, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. It was such a great pleasure for me. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you for your work.
Thanks, everybody. Hi, it's me, Daniel, and I hope you found incredible value in the video you just watched. If you did, please share it with the world, like it, comment, because this way more people can find their way to peaceful sleep. Now, if you like learning by reading and you feel like you have a little ways to go, then head over to Amazon and check out Set It and Forget It. It is a very easy book to read. It is flowy, it has illustrations. But if you're looking for some deeper understanding, then this is Natto, maybe the one for you. I hope they really help. Thank you for being here, and thank you for helping.